What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Country Central podcast. It's Jack hanging out with Brandon today. And something that I wanted to touch on, and I've actually been meaning to get to this topic for several months, but we had Lauren Weintraub on our podcast back in October. And in that podcast, she said something that I've been coming back to for a little while, which was the fact that art direction and showmanship and colors and that type of creativity, that side of the pop star lane, it really hasn't shown itself much in country music. Like we saw it in the 90s with Shania Twain, but Shania Twain was a pop star, and she's continued to be that since. But I really got down this rabbit hole of country artists who were really embracing the artistic side, the visual art of the industry a little bit more than others, because I think especially between 2012 and 2017, there were a lot of album artwork where it's just a dude sitting in a bar or a dude standing in a field. There was a lot of that over and over and over. And so to hear Lauren go no, I really want to make the visuals and the way things look and um, little Easter eggs in the album covers and things like that. I want to make that a bigger part of what I do and what country music is all about right now. I thought that was super cool, and I thought it was super progressive with the way the industry is going, because we've had more country artists climbing around the pop charts than we have in some time. I think I saw the stat today that Last Night is about to be the first number one Billboard single all genre since the 1990s, unless you count Old Town Road or whatever. And that's a big deal. And that kind of necessitates, I feel an emphasis on visuals and on showmanship, because like if you look at the dudes who are representing us right now and the chicks who are representing us in country music, they're not bland. They have a very strong self-styled image. It's Wallen with his dopey mullet. It's Luke Combs and his good old boy fisherman vibe. These people have a unique style, and I think that's really necessary in country music. So that's what I wanted to get in today, long and short of it. Just who's crushing it as far as style goes, what as far as music videos, and maybe some artists and some videos that we might be hoping for a little more from.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say pretty much, well, first of all, it's good to be back on the Country Central podcast. I took a break for a little bit, but just want to say I'm happy to be back. So Jack and I are going to kill this episode, and we're looking forward to a lot more coming up. But just want to say, going off of a couple artists that Jack just mentioned, we talked about Morgan Wallen. I just want to say, music videos in particular, and this kind of struck a chord with me. I've been seeing a lot of videos, especially with Thought You Should Know, where we're seeing a lot more authenticity in these videos, and we're seeing a lot of home videos that are a part of the music video, which I really cherish a lot. I think that's awesome that they include it. I think it just shows so much more authenticity, and it kind of brings you into that person's life. Jack, as you mentioned, there was a period of time in the 2010s where things were just so generic. I mean, I can think of covers, like you just said, of an artist sitting at a bar. I know Easton Corbin had a couple of him, sitting on a diner or sitting on a front porch, just not to name call him, but just saying that, there's so much generic stuff out there. But I've just been noticing a lot more authenticity in these music videos in particular. A lot of homemade videos that are put in there, a lot of family members that are in these videos, and it's always something that fans can take away from and be like, wow, that reminds me of my family, or that reminds me of where I came from. And aside from a goofy look of a mullet, I mean, yeah, definitely a trend starter in the country community, but I think it just ties into the fact that we're really understanding these artists a lot more than we have. And I think social media has made a huge presence with that too. Just the fact that everyone has so much accessibility to seeing a lot of visuals, and not only music videos, a lot of people are doing a lot of visual albums, and people are able to see all the intricacies that come out of it. So there's just a lot of symbolism that comes out behind that. And a few songs in particular, aside from Morgan Wallen, and a few different music videos that I've seen, we've kind of seen songs that have two different perspectives to them. And it's kind of interesting to see storylines behind songs. I mean, I could think of a couple with, with Carly Pearce and Ashley McBride with Never Wanted to Be That Girl. And we're just seeing different perspectives from relationships, being a guy and a girl. So I just like seeing that there's more authenticity. I think that's the biggest takeaway that I have here with especially the visuals and the music videos.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's kind of funny because like the DIY thing, as you were mentioning, like the home videos and all of that, it's definitely taking over because that's like kind of the TikTok blueprint is just like self-styled, low budget, low fidelity videos a lot of the time. Sometimes like they make it look like a camcorder video from like the 1990s or something like that. But what really like got me down this track was like kind of the bigger things, the showier stuff, and the things that like country music has shied away from for some time. I think that's why Taylor Swift caught a lot of flack in the early 2000s and the early 2010s because like I mean everything was big, everything was stylish and glitzy, and I don't think that there was anything like intrinsically like uncountry about that. And that's kind of where like Hardy landed for me a little bit. I know we talk about Hardy a lot on this podcast, and like just a few episodes ago, we like dedicated an entire episode to him. But I do think it's funny that like this dude is he doesn't look like a pop star. Shoot, he doesn't even like on the surface look like a star really at all. And I mean that's certainly a new trend in country music is just like stars that don't look like stars. But he's certainly one of them. But like my gosh, if like artistry, like visual artistry and like style is not a part of his brand because every single album, I think these album covers and like now some of the videos and things, they're more like artistically and aesthetically pleasing than like a lot of what we see out of Nashville at this point. Like you've got the teal thing with a rock, like that was very distinct. And like I don't even remember the last time like any music artist used teal as their like primary color.
Hmm.
You could see it in his live shows and all of this stuff. And I thought that that was just awesome. And of course, he upped the ante a significant amount with the Mockingbird and the Crow, with the dark and the light, a lot of shadows. I mean, and you could like see like him silhouetted and like a little bit of his face. Like, I love the fact that even artists who look rugged, who sing about country stuff, who like country and like I'm country is like the biggest part of their brand. I love the fact that even those people are like, you know, seeing the importance of art direction. And frankly, I think that that was a bit of a miss on the latest Morgan Wallen album. I mean, I caught a lot of flack on our Instagram this past week at the time of recording this for saying that I was wanting more from the last Wallen album. And again, that doesn't mean I didn't like it, but like I was wanting more. But I remember when Dangerous came out and it was so like kind of edgy. There was a font. It was very distinct. It was him in this like dark green room and everything, and it stuck out. But like one thing at a time. I mean, this is kind of how I knew it was just going to be like an album. It wasn't the album. Dangerous was the album. And I mean, until I'm proven otherwise in a future album cycle, like Dangerous is the album of Morgan Wallen's career. It's not one thing at a time. But the fact that on one thing at a time, it's just him standing on a porch and it's brown, it's boring. Like there's not much to it other than that. And then it was very indicative of the album itself. Like these songs were just songs. Like, sorry, Wallen fans, I know you're gonna come and crucify me, but like, them's the facts. Um, and so that's what I felt about the Mockingbird and the Crow. Like it stuck out. You knew exactly what you were getting. It was going to be edgy. It was going to be multifaceted and give you a lot to think about. And the same was definitely true of the Wallen album too. Like as like two of the like definitive stars of the moment right now, I think they really kind of tell the story as far as like what art direction can do.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the same page with you, Jack, with the Morgan Wallen albums. I mean, if people haven't already come after me yet, they're going to. But I'm not a huge fan of Morgan Wallen. I'm not a huge fan of his music. There are some songs that I like. There actually were a handful of songs on One Thing at a Time that I did like. But yes, the album cover, I mean, really was tasteless. It wasn't like black and white. It was just kind of just a grayed out wash of I don't know, some gray and like black colors, and I mean, there's minimal color on there. So it wasn't anything that kind of drew me in. If we're talking about album covers, I know a couple recently that really drew me in was Kelsea Ballerini's cover album for "Subject to Change." I really liked the album cover because it was just a light and airy feel. She had like this yellow dress on, but it was kind of blurred, and you knew it was her, but it marked like a different chapter of her life. And that's what kind of drew me into it because in her past covers, we've always seen like still images of her. Everything's been very, I know Unapologetically was just very, it was like, I didn't like that album cover. It was just very dark. It was like they were doing like a floral arrangement with her like sitting down and just looked kind of just dark and dreary. But Subject to Change like reminded me of like a new renaissance of Kelsea Ballerini because we saw this whole different chapter of her as a 28-year-old turning 29, going through all of her relationships, whether that's her with either her ex-husband or friendship relationships, everything that's like going on in her mind that she came out of COVID with, learning from all of her experience. I know she highlights different friendships falling apart, having different just personality and like different characteristics coming out of the pandemic. So I was really impressed to see that album cover. And I will say this, and though I'm not a huge fan of her, I really did like Carrie Underwood's album cover for Denim and Rhinestones. Just very sleek. Love the purple tones in it. And although she's more of a brand, we've talked about this on the podcast a lot. She's more of a brand now. Being, she does more fitness. She's, I don't really see her as she's an entertainer. I don't really see her in particular as an artist enough as I used to. But the album cover was very sleek, very crisp, went along with all the tracks that I thought were on the album. Still haven't listened to Out of the Truck yet. I still got to get on that one for her deluxe. But I thought it was just very crisp and clean, and it kind of matched the nostalgicness of the songs that were on the album too.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up these two because I mean, Kelsey, I feel like is one from the art direction side. Like,
Hmm.
I always feel like she does it right. And like,
Yeah.
honestly, like I've been drawn to a lot of her music based on like the style and the art direction. I mean, if it didn't look that way, if it didn't have that unique look to it, like I don't think I would have been as compelled because a lot of her music, like at least to me, has been a lot of been very pedestrian. But like honest to God, like she nails it every single time. Like that blue artwork, we did like the Country Central Awards back in December. And
Hmm.
Brandon, I know you and me both, we had that Subject to Change artwork like pretty
Yeah.
high on our list. And
Yeah.
it absolutely captured what I think that thought that album should have been all about. It was about like color and excitement, but also not knowing you couldn't see everything. It was bright, but it was confusing. And I thought that that was like just perfect. The album was called Subject to Change, for gosh sakes. And like the album before that, Kelsey, it was very just like chill and euphoric.
Chill.
It was these like
Her on a grass lawn. Yeah.
exactly. It was
Yeah.
just simple. And I think that's really what that album was all about. Like, I think the most profound songs on that were stripped back. They were just her like reflecting on life. It made sense. And of course, if we springboard a few years forward to the EP that came out a few weeks ago, Rolling Up the Welcome Mat, like that one was dark and it was brooding. It was almost like kind of science fiction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it was about like frustration and tragedy and all
Mhm.
that stuff. And I thought that was awesome. Like I remember I'm still flashing back to the Lauren Weintraub conversation that like started all of this. But I mean, I do remember her saying that like I a lot of the times like the girls who like kind of lean towards the pop side of the country spectrum because the girls definitely do that more than the guys largely. Like those are the ones who get it with the art direction, I feel like. And I love that like so much of the industry is following suit because it really is like one of the best parts of pop music, right? The fact that it is like vivacious and like well thought out and well constructed. I mean, you're not going to have one album artwork look like the other one. Like every, I
Right.
mean, let me pick an album. Like Easton Corbin is fine. Every Easton Corbin album, you know
Yeah.
what I mean. Every Brett, I mean, up
Not
until a
wrong.
certain point, like every Brett Eldridge album.
Yeah.
Yeah, uh,
Jason Aldean.
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Huge.
Jason, all
Huge.
the way.
All the way. All the
Him in a
way.
field, him in a bar, him in a barn, him in a
Behind a
bar, him in
barn
a bar.
door.
Like,
Yeah.
good lord, exactly. So yeah, I think that that's really the right way to think about it, and it's a consequence of. I said this already, but it's a consequence of country music becoming so much bigger in the mainstream.
Yeah.
like I don't think that Last Night will be the last like country export to cross over to pop radio, and that's not even an especially country song. So I
Right,
feel like, I mean, and but if it opens the floodgates, then like so be it. But like
right.
we've gotta have that visual appeal as well, and it's cool to see Nashville like following that.
Yeah, definitely agree. And and I've said this before, most songs, most of these country songs with the snaps, when they have those in there, like that's going over to pop radio. A little overused, but yeah, like that and Last Night, yeah, like that's not going to be the last one that's going to be a pop crossover. I do want to highlight what you just said because you made me think about Lauren. But her EP cover was she was sitting on a stool in a lake, right? And then she had like fire on one side and she was like sitting in the water. So it was just like kind of showed like the duality between like dark and light. It was just kind of cool dynamic that she had. I just want to put that tidbit out there. But yeah, we've seen so many covers that I mean, we just mentioned Jason Aldean. I mean, there isn't one that I can look at like his albums. I'm like, oh yeah, that really did it. I mean, color wise, maybe Old Boots, New Dirt. I mean, I don't know. It was. I think the deluxe was green. The deluxe was green. The regular one was blue, and I think the deluxe went green because I remember buying that from Target, back in the day. But yeah,
Shame, shame. That
is
wasn't me
it?
now. That was younger Brandon. I didn't know back then.
Oh yeah, you did not know that Brandon back then.
No,
No, you
no.
didn't. Because
Anyway,
I used to like Jason Aldean. I mean, like, listen, I'm from
nothing wrong with that.
Connecticut, and when we listened to country, it was during the summer. So when all that music came out, like summertime was country time, and then wintertime was like R&B, pop, rock. That was like the other genres.
That's
But
valid, honestly.
but anyway, well, I was gonna say something I can't remember now. Shoot, you can take it away if you want. I
It's all
can't
good. It's
remember.
all good for sure. Um, yeah, I think we've covered a lot of those points when it comes to Nashville because Nashville has always had like this like little bitty inferiority complex when it comes to like the rest of the music industry. I mean, especially a few years back, but like even still, like Nashville wants to be cool with the kids. They want to be liked by the pop scene. They want to see their artists on their little like imprints of Universal and Sony, etc. They want to see them at the Billboard Awards and all of that. I mean, they have a huge like I think jealousy factor there. But I mean, even so, country music obviously is sounding a lot more country than we used to. Like, I mean, if we talk about quote unquote saving country music, it feels like that's a battle we're winning. And even so, like, there's still elements of pop music that are there, and showmanship is a big part of that. I mean, even the "Wait in the Truck" video where Hardy is like in his jumpsuit and all of that. But I think that we always want to touch on like the other facet of country music, and that's like the indie side of things, where like
Mhm.
because it's all playing together, right? They're all like if we're not already there, we're heading towards like I mean a country music monopoly where like everything is in the one big melting pot, and there's not going to be like a this is my kind of country, this isn't on the radio, this is my thing. Like that's not going to be a thing pretty soon.
Right.
Like we're past the point of like being protective, and I thought that was like super aggressive and not constructive when it comes to country music anyway. So we're coming to that point, and we were talking about myself and Brandon. We were talking before this podcast about like some of these dudes like Tyler Childers and Colter Wall who were like a little resistant when it comes to like you know being being in the public eye. Like they whether they want it or not, they're gaining the attention. And I think that they do want it. They're signing to big labels and all of this stuff. Well, as we do this podcast now, Culture Wall is still independent, but these artists that are gaining lots of clout, they're signing big deals. They want to get their music out there, but I mean, it's more and more apparent to me that you do have to play the game a little bit, and that's where Cody Johnson and Parker McCollum have found so much success. Because like if you don't want that, if you don't want to go all in with the marketing and all of that,
Hmm.
like it might be a tough fit. And I don't think that we know really what that would look like if an artist like resisted that side of things. But I know like Zach Bryan, I mean, there's always like a pretty strong visual direction. I mean, with Louis Nice recording like every moment of his life, and that's his music videos, or like the American Heartbreak artwork and things like that. Like he gets it a little bit, but I am interested to see like some of these dudes who like don't play the game and don't want to get it. Like, where is that going to land as like showmanship is a bigger part of country music?
Yeah, yep, and I definitely agree with that. And see, you saying that, like I think of, but I go back to the females in country music. I think I just thought of Lainey Wilson, but she knows how to play it, and her image and everything that she's brought forward is her authentic style. I know Jack and I were talking a little bit before about some uninspired country artists that are kind of out there. We're not really sure of like their direction that they're going to. Um, I gotta say, there's a lot of males that come to mind when I think of that. I think
There
about
are,
people.
there are.
I think about people in the game who have been out there, and one of the first people that comes to mind is Chris Young. He's not.
Oh,
He's not really inspired with much of his music. I recently saw him at a concert, and he started singing his new song "Looking for You," which I reviewed a few weeks back, but which I didn't think was a great song. But he started off the song, and I was like, I've got a new one, hot off the press. Here we go. And it was just like out there, and I'm like, all right, maybe a little more enthusiasm there or something. But like, he's one of the people that comes to mind. I mean, when it comes to, I know we just talked about Jason, but like he's another one that comes to mind for me. I mean, I think about music videos, and you think about all the songs that have come to him. He hasn't written or produced any of his music. I think he's written maybe 3 or 4 songs back in the day. But I was just watching if I was just watching the music video for "If I Didn't Love You," and there's nothing special about anything, and it's kind of like it was nice having Carrie on there, but there's nothing special visual wise about anything that's going on. And I just think about a lot of male artists that come to mind when it comes to that, because I really do feel like the females, they do know themselves very artistically. They have a good scheme when it comes to cover albums, everything like that. And when I look at a lot of these guys, I'm like, we need to spice it up a little bit.
yeah, it's true. But I mean, I don't think that that's necessarily on like the guys themselves, but it's just because like that's what we were getting from Nashville for so long. Like these dudes were, I mean, they were the fuel to the engine, so to speak, on the radio.
Agreed.
They just kept throwing this stuff on the radio, these Chris Youngs and, mid-career Jason Aldeans and still Jason Aldean and even Keith Urban, God love him. Like it kept on going. And like, especially with comments from these PDs like, the men are the lettuce to the salad and the women are the cherry tomatoes. Like that was an
Yeah.
actual thing that was said by a radio PD, like publicly. So like that was like really the issue, I think. And especially when you get dudes like Chris Young and his ilk, who really never had a sense of who they were in the first place. Like
Yeah.
there was never I'm Chris Young and I'm like this. This is what makes me special. And
Right.
thank goodness we have more artists like that nowadays, where that's the it factor. That's what you need to get in the door. You
Right.
need to be able to say, I'm so and so, and this is my style. I'm Hardy, and I like punk rock. I'm Zach Bryan, and I'm a sad
Yep.
recluse, like
Yep.
that type of thing. Like that is the
I'm
the
Sam
essential
Hunt, and
thing.
I'm a sad boy.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm Sam Hunt. I'm Sam Hunt, and I like R&B music, and I'm always sad. Yeah, like I mean, and Sam Hunt, even though I mean he looked like a tool when he came out. Like, there's no doubt he has a like individuality. He is unique
Yeah.
in himself, and like that's
And
very
that's
cool.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And we've talked several different times about how it was just cookie cutter people for years on years. I mean, like if you look back on the years and you look at even 80s, 90s, and you look at these country artists that were out there. I mean, a lot of them known as the kings and queens of country music, like their authentic selves. You get to the 2000s, and early 2000s kind of carried that in, but you go through this period of time where like there was just a cookie cutter, like off the press carbon copy of artist after artist. And that doesn't even include the females. The females in country music had the greatest gap from the early 2000s, I would say, until the mid 2010s. I mean, like, who
Yeah,
did
there
you really
weren't any
hear
of
of?
them. It was
Who did
Carrie
you
and
really hear
Miranda
of?
for
Maybe,
like 8 years, and that
yeah,
was it.
Carrie, Miranda, and our one hit wonder by the Wreckers.
Yeah,
which
that was
that's
it.
not any shade to the records because I'm a fan of Michelle Branch too, but like you didn't really get anybody until mid 20 mid 2015, like, or mid 2010s, I mean, around that era, where we started getting a lot of debut female artists. We started getting Ashley, Carly. We started getting like Ingrid Andress, and then that's when Lainey came along, and like you have all these
Kelsey.
different females that have their own different identity. Um, I will credit Lauren Elena for kind of, I don't know about paving the way, but I will credit Lauren Elena for being one of those first to kind of break into it, even though Carrie was already around at the time and Miranda. But coming off of a reality singing show, I do credit her a little bit for it, but
Yeah, I'm with you. And see, I mean, I think that 1 second. I'll edit that out. Um, I think that, I mean, I'm less inclined to give Lauren Elena any of like the cast of 2015 much credit, because the ones that did it were the ones who stood out a little bit and who separated from the pack and did things that weren't like what everybody else did. And I
mhm.
have to give Carly Pierce, I think, most of the credit for that. I mean, 29, like Carly Pierce was there for her first two albums. Like, I mean, I guess Every Little Thing and the single with Lee Bryce
I hope you're
did
happy
really
now.
well. But when 29 came out, people were like, whoa, this is different. This is special. And I
Hmm.
mean, that was right around the point where it was like, okay, let artists say what they want to say. That's what country music is all about, is
Yeah,
honesty. I mean,
yeah,
to paraphrase the Kelly Clarkson monologue. But that's really the turning point, and that's what it's all about. And I love to see that, going back to the main topic. I love to see that reflected when it's a big visual production as well. Like, I think that Carly did that very well with her old school outfits, where she almost like dressed like Loretta Lynn, like
yeah,
on the 29 artwork and stuff like
yeah,
that. Like, it made sense, and it felt like, I mean, so pure and sensible for the era that she was going into.
yeah,
And I mean, like we said, I think we're really hitting a turning point where these artists who just like came and went on the radio, like they're gonna have something to hang on to in their 40s and 50s. You know what I mean? Like Chris Young, I think, is in his late 30s. And what is he going to have in his 40s? He's gonna have all I can think about is Getting You Home, and that's all he has. I mean, and clearly he doesn't even want to do it anymore, because every story I hear about him is just that he's getting drunk somewhere. So like,
yeah,
today's Otis right now are going to have something to hang on to. John Party will be doing this for the rest of his life, and I can just tell from his face and from his countenance that he loves it, and he's going to keep on
yeah,
doing it. Like, I mean, I don't know if Hardy's going to be like screaming his face off like every single night all the time, but he's always going to have something to say.
yeah. And
And
go ahead.
no, you're good.
And which artists are passionate about it and which ones aren't, like you just mentioned. And what I do want to say is I think songwriting has a huge part in it too. And I'll say this, so we can wrap up. But the thing with Carly's 29 project, that was the first project she put out that she co-wrote every song on the album. And you think about people who have, putting their heart and soul into music, and how many restrictions people have had with labels. Oh, you can't, we don't want this on the album. This isn't what we want you to look like. This isn't how we want you to be seen as a country artist. You're teetering into areas that we don't usually go into. And it's like, you see that and you see the authenticity. And that's like the biggest thing is like a lot of these projects, I think a lot of these labels are like, all right, you know what? We're going to let our artists have a little more creativeness with this. We're going to let our artists have more input. And I kind of think that's what sells, because people know what's legit and what's real and what's not. And if you have someone coming out with an album or an EP and you just see like, did they really care about this? Was this anything like that they put their heart and soul into? And people see what's real and what's fake pretty easily. So I think that's a huge part of it. And like you said, like that becomes a huge staple of their catalog. Like when they're older, when these artists are older, like that's going to be a staple of their catalog, and people are going to know like that came from their heart and soul, and that's what makes it all that more genuine.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I've had a blast like getting into this and how like the visual medium marries together with like what's really deep down here and like what the artist wants to say. And like how a lot of the times like it really is correlated. Like if you're gonna like we were talking about with the Wallen album, like if you're making a bland album that's more of the same, the album artwork and the visuals around it may look exactly that way. But y'all, we want to thank you so much for hanging out with us. You can check us out all week long at Country Central on Instagram. Hit up that Country Central Country Madness bracket tournament all week long. That's going down. It's super fun. I think as we record this podcast, we're into round 2 right now. So when it drops, we'll be a lot further. But until next time, we'll catch you real soon with another episode.